Today on Jazz Mental, we're going to talk about how do jazz musicians learn improvisation? Hey, it's Tobey here. And I saw this question the other day on Quora, and several people weighed in. There was about 20 answers there, none of which were from actual people who'd actually learned to improvise. Seemed like a lot of conjecture, and I really wanted to set the record straight. So I'm going to talk about learning improvisation as somebody who's actually learned how to do it. And then we're actually going to apply it to a real recording. And we're going to get into it right after this. Hey, welcome back. We are talking about how jazz musicians learn improvisation, and the way that I thought I'd explain it to you is to show you what's called a lead sheet and how I learned to play music from a lead sheet, because a lead sheet is really the entire thing, including the melody and the chords and everything is improvised. It's not just soloing, right? The whole piece is improvised because it's just a guide as to what to play. So it only includes melody. So if you look at the lead sheet, the melody is like this. And of course, you may recognize that melody from the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The song is called Pure Imagination. So if you look at the chart itself, you can see that every now and then, every few beats or every few bars, there's a chord. The first chord is an F minor 11th chord. So as a musician, when you learn to improvise, you learn what that chord means. And it basically means an F minor chord. And then 11 is here because it's 11 notes away from the first note. So if you count up, it's 11 notes. And then it also includes the 7th, which is implied as an improviser. And also, those two notes. So like this. So while non-jazz players might play an F minor chord like that, a jazz musician would play it as the root like that, but then there's all kinds of different voicings like this. Or this. Or this. Or this. Or this. So again, when you take the chord in its original form, which is here, there are all kinds of different voicings that you can put together. You can put minor seconds, you can put upper structure triads, there's all kinds of things you can do. And then if you move on to the next chord, B flat 7 altered basically means that all the notes above here are altered. So if this is the 9th, then it would be altered somehow. If this is the 11th, it would be altered somehow. And if this is the 13th, here, it would be altered somehow. And sometimes, obviously, when you do that, you need to understand that there are ways that work that others don't. And then you get to the E flat major 7th chord, and it's the same thing. So as the music goes by, you have to choose the chords properly, the proper voicings for each chord. Voicings meaning how are the fingers arranged for that chord. And you also have to get the melody in there. And then when soloing comes, or you're trying to fill out the notes, that's when you need scales. So on top of all of the chords, you need to learn scales. So if this was the F minor 11 chord, a scale over top of that would be like this. But then there's passing notes like this. Which is called a bebop scale. And then you'd have to do that again when you hit the B flat 7 chord. Or a chord that gets the flat 9 in there, or a scale that gets the flat 9 in there. So this is how jazz musicians learn to improvise. They first understand chords and the way chords move to each other. So a 2-5-1. And over time, that becomes a little more natural as your fingers and muscle memory find those chords easily. So in the beginning, it's just how does the brain correlate to the sound of the chord and the fingers actually move to that place. So it's a little bit of obviously practicing, and over time it becomes more natural. And then of course, once you get into the soloing section, it's about stringing all of the chords and all of the scales together in order to make it sound like improvisation. Obviously, that was very simple improvising and it didn't really sound great. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take all of that knowledge and apply it to an actual recording. So we have a project in Reaper going called Pure Imagination. And what we're going to do is go find the solo section, which starts here. And let's just play that. So we started an improv in the last video, and we're going to select this section here. Keep going a little bit. A little hard to do this on a laptop, but you get the idea. And I'm going to start recording at that point, which is the punch-in point. And I'm going to choose time selection auto punch, and then start a little bit ahead. And then when it gets to that section, it's going to start recording the piano, and you can hear the solo over top of the bass and drum. So this is the ultimate application of how jazz musicians learn to improvise. We want to get to the point where we're playing with other musicians and improvising over top of what they're playing. So let's go ahead and record this. And then once we have that, we can literally just replay that just to make sure that it's recorded okay. Let's go back to where it started. So as you can see, with a certain amount of practice and self-discipline over time, a good jazz musician learns to improvise not just using the melody, the chords, and the scales, and obviously rhythm, but they also learn to throw some emotion into it and make little what I call interim melodies, following lines through and making sure that it actually sounds like music. So I think if you're a musician who's looking to learn how to improvise, it's a good idea to get some instruction on this, because one of the things that I read on Quora was somebody said, well, it's just trial and error. Well, I think trial and error might be the most popular way to learn something, but it's also the least effective, because you don't actually know what errors you're making if you don't have proper guidance and instruction on how things are put together and what sounds good and what doesn't. And that takes experience. So my recommendation is, if you are somebody who wants to learn improvisation, then it's a good idea to study with somebody who knows how to do that. We do such a thing, by the way, over at jazzmental.com. You might want to check that out. And I appreciate your time today. This is How Jazz Musicians Learn Improvisation. My name is Paul Tobey. See you next time. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. This is a new channel here on YouTube, so it'll really help the traction. And we're posting videos just like this one all the time, pretty much every day. So you can look forward to that. If you haven't yet been to jazzmental.com, go there and subscribe for notifications about upcoming masterclasses and courses. And what I want you to do now is get out there and improvise.